People say money makes you powerful. But sometimes, it only exposes how small your heart really is. That night, under the blinding glow of a crystal chandelier, a young black woman stood frozen in the living room of a mansion. She was in her late 20s, early 30s, modest blouse, neat slacks, hair pulled back, nerves clutched tight behind tired eyes. She had come for something simple, a chance, a babysitting job. It wasn't glamorous, but it would pay the bills, keep food on the table, and give her son a little more than leftovers and late rent notices. But the woman standing across from her, the millionaire's wife, wasn't looking at her as a candidate. She was looking at her like an intruder. You? The wife's voice carried a sharp laugh that didn't reach her eyes. She was draped in silk, dripping in jewelry, every inch of her screaming superiority. You expect me to leave my child with someone like you? The babysitter's heart sank. She had felt prejudice before, but the cruelty tonight was deliberate. "Ma'am," she said softly, trying to hold her ground, "I can assure you I've cared for children all my life. Your son would be in safe hands." The wife waved a hand dismissively, stepping closer, her perfume suffocating. "No, no, no. This isn't about safe hands. This is about image. People like you don't fit in homes like this. My friends would never let me live it down." The words sliced deeper than any blade. The babysitter's chest tightened as shame clawed at her, but under the shame, something hotter began to burn. Still, she whispered, "Children don't need image. They need love. And I can give that." The wife tilted her head, eyes narrowing. Then she delivered the final cut. "You can leave now, before you embarrass yourself any further." Tears pricked the babysitter's eyes. She reached for her bag, each step toward the door heavy as stone. But then, the echo of a door opening behind her. Footsteps. A silence so sharp it froze the room. And a man's voice, calm but thundering with power. "Did I just hear you dismiss my wife because of the color of her skin?" The millionaire's wife stiffened. The babysitter turned slowly, her breath catching. There he was. Her husband. Tall, broad-shouldered, early 40s. His presence filled the room in a way the chandeliers never could. He wasn't dressed like the wealthy guests who paraded through mansions like this. No suit, no tie. Just a black jacket, worn boots, and a face carved with strength and scars of battles no one here could imagine. His eyes locked onto the millionaire's wife. Steady. Unflinching. And in that moment, the power in the room shifted. The millionaire's wife blinked, suddenly less certain. "And who exactly are you supposed to be?" He stepped forward, voice low but commanding. "I'm the man who won't let you spit on her dignity. I'm her husband." The room went still. The wife's smirk wavered. But she had no idea. The storm that was about to hit her family had only just walked through her front door. The chandelier above still sparkled like a crown, but now it seemed to flicker in fear of the storm brewing below. The millionaire's wife squared her shoulders, clinging to her arrogance like armor. She smirked at the husband, the black man who had just stepped in, and said, "Husband? Oh please. You expect me to believe someone like her has a man like you?" The babysitter flinched at the venom in the words. But her husband didn't. He didn't blink. He didn't even flinch. He took a slow step forward, boots echoing against marble. His voice was calm, measured, but every syllable pressed down on the room like iron. "Believe it. And believe this. Every insult you've thrown at her tonight, you've thrown at me too. You think your wealth gives you power? Let me tell you what power really looks like." The wife laughed nervously, masking her unease with mockery. "Power? Sir, you're standing in my home. Do you see these walls? Do you know what they cost? Do you have any idea who my husband is?" The babysitter's eyes darted to her husband. She knew that tone in the wife's voice, dripping with entitlement, inflated by money. But she also knew the man she had married. He didn't bow to titles or gold. He leaned in slightly, his gaze unshakable. "I don't care about the price of your walls. I care about the value of respect. And you've just proven this mansion has none." The wife's face reddened. She wasn't used to being challenged, certainly not in her own fortress of wealth. "How dare you?" she began but stopped short. Because suddenly, the sound of little footsteps echoed down the grand staircase. The millionaire's young son appeared, no older than 6, wearing pajamas patterned with stars. He rubbed his eyes sleepily, looking between his mother, the babysitter, and the tall stranger who filled the room with quiet fire. "Mommy?" the boy asked. "Why are you yelling at her?" The wife froze, words caught in her throat. The babysitter's chest tightened, her heart aching for the boy. She saw the innocence in his eyes, the confusion. And it broke her, not because she was being insulted, but because this child was watching cruelty dressed as authority. The husband crouched down, softening his tone, speaking to the boy. Your mommy's just having a bad night. But listen to me, son. Don't ever think someone's skin makes them less. Okay? The boy tilted his head, still confused, but he nodded slowly. The wife's jaw clenched, her embarrassment turning to rage. Enough, she snapped. You think you can waltz in here and lecture me in front of my own child? My husband will deal with this when he gets home. The babysitter's husband rose to his full height again. His presence seemed to tower even higher now. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. His silence carried more weight than her screams ever could. Finally he said, "Then let him come. I'd love to hear how a millionaire explains teaching his son hate." The wife's eyes widened. For the first time that evening, her arrogance faltered. But she held on, retreating into her one last weapon. Money? She hissed, "I could buy and sell people like you. That's the difference between us. I have wealth. You have nothing." The husband tilted his head, a faint smile crossing his lips, not of amusement but of pity. You think wealth is everything? Then you've already lost more than you'll ever understand. The wife opened her mouth to retort, but just then, the front door clicked open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hall. The air shifted, thick with tension, and the millionaire himself stepped inside. The millionaire finally arrives, unaware of the storm waiting in his own living room. If you've ever seen arrogance crumble when the truth shows up, wait until you see what happens next. The massive oak doors groaned as they shut, and the sound of polished shoes striking marble filled the air. The millionaire had arrived. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit even at this late hour, he carried himself like a man who was used to being obeyed the moment he entered a room. His watch glinted, a timepiece worth more than most people's homes. His eyes swept over the scene. His wife flushed and trembling with rage, the babysitter clutching her bag near the door, and a stranger, the babysitter's husband, standing tall, unflinching, unbowed. What's going on here? His voice was smooth, commanding, but laced with irritation. He didn't like disorder in his palace. The wife rushed forward, seizing her chance. She clung to his arm dramatically, her voice dripping with wounded pride. Darling, thank God you're home. This woman, this babysitter, was disrespectful, and then she called in her husband to threaten me in our own house. The millionaire's gaze snapped to the babysitter's husband. Cold, assessing, dangerous. The babysitter's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to explain, but her husband's hand brushed hers gently, a silent message, "Let me handle this." The millionaire stepped closer, towering over him. "You dare storm into my home? You dare speak to my wife like this?" His tone was low, measured, but vibrating with power. But the babysitter's husband didn't waver. He stood straight, shoulders squared, eyes locked onto the millionaire's. "I didn't storm in. I walked in. And I spoke to your wife because she disrespected mine." Repeatedly. The wife gasped as if the very word disrespected was blasphemy. "See," she cried. "Do you hear how he talks to us?" The millionaire's jaw tightened. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you know who I am?" The babysitter's husband didn't flinch. "Do you?" The air thickened. The wife's smugness faltered at the sheer audacity of the reply. No one spoke to her husband like that. Ever. But the babysitter's husband wasn't finished. His voice was steady, deep, cutting through the silence like steel. "You think money makes you untouchable. You think your walls, your suits, your bank accounts make you a king. But let me tell you something, respect can't be bought. Dignity can't be bought. And tonight, in front of your own child, your wife tried to strip both from mine." The millionaire's eyes narrowed, his temper rising. "Careful," he warned, his tone icy. "You're stepping on dangerous ground." But before he could say more, a small voice piped up again. "Daddy?" The boy was still on the staircase, eyes wide, hugging the railing. "Why is mommy being mean to her?" The room froze. The millionaire turned, his composure cracking for the first time. He looked at his son, the heir to everything he owned, staring back at him with innocent confusion. The babysitter's husband spoke softly, his eyes never leaving the millionaire. "That's the ground you should be careful of. What your son learns tonight. What he sees. Because long after the money fades, long after the parties end, he'll remember whether his parents taught him arrogance or respect." The millionaire swallowed hard, his jaw working. He turned back to his wife, who was now pale, her confidence slipping. For a moment, just a moment, the great millionaire, the man untouchable by law, by society, by wealth, looked trapped. And then, like a cornered beast, he lashed out. You don't get to lecture me in my house." His voice thundered across the marble hall, shaking the walls. "Get out, both of you. Out before I have you thrown out." The wife smirked again, clinging to her husband's fury like it was a shield. "Yes," she sneered, "get out before we remind you of your place." The babysitter's husband didn't move. Not yet. His calm was unshaken, even in the face of raw power. Finally, he said quietly, "You'll regret those words." The millionaire scoffed. "Is that a threat?" But the husband only turned, guiding his wife gently toward the door. He looked back once, his eyes burning with something neither of them understood, something that wasn't anger but promise. And as the heavy front doors closed behind them, the millionaire and his wife shared a nervous glance, though neither would admit it. Because deep down they both felt it. This wasn't over. They think they've expelled the babysitter and her husband, but the real storm is only beginning. The courtroom was buzzing like a hive on the day of the hearing. People from the neighborhood had packed in, some to support the billionaire's wife, others out of sheer curiosity. The case had made its way into whispers at country clubs and barbershops alike. The babysitter they mistreated is married to him? Reporters lined the hallways. Cameras clicked every time Jonas and his wife walked in. She wore a simple dress, elegant but humble, standing beside her husband whose calm demeanor radiated an unshakable authority. Across the aisle, the billionaire and his wife looked visibly restless, their arrogance crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. The judge entered. Silence fell. The prosecutor laid out the complaint: false accusations, attempted defamation, and discrimination. The evidence was damning. Security footage showed the billionaire's wife berating the babysitter, dismissing her with disgust, and finally attempting to throw her out without pay. But the bombshell came when Jonas himself took the stand. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He spoke of the struggles of being judged not for his work but for the color of his skin, of how people saw only what they wanted: a cleaner, a driver, a servant, never imagining the discipline, the sacrifices, the nights of sweat and blood that built his career. Then, with a deliberate pause, he looked straight at the billionaire and his wife. "You saw a woman who wanted to work, to provide for her family, and you tried to humiliate her. What you didn't see was that she had someone who would never let her stand alone." Gasps filled the room. The billionaire's wife shifted uncomfortably, her face pale as stone. The defense scrambled, but it was useless. The billionaire had already been cornered by his own arrogance. Their lawyers tried to downplay the incident as a misunderstanding, but the judge wasn't having it. When the verdict came, it was swift and sharp. The court found in favor of Jonas and his wife. Damages were awarded for defamation and emotional distress, a public apology ordered, and the billionaire's spotless reputation took the first permanent crack it had ever known. But that wasn't the end. Weeks later, the very same media outlets that once praised the billionaire were now running headlines about Jonas. From fighter to advocate, champion steps up for justice. The babysitter they tried to humiliate is now a symbol of strength. Invitations flooded in. Community leaders asked Jonas to speak. Young athletes wanted to train under him. His wife, once dismissed as just a babysitter, was now recognized for the dignity and courage she carried that day. And the billionaire? He could barely show his face without whispers trailing him. Every event, every charity gala, every business move, people remembered. The humiliation he tried to inflict on someone else had become his own brand. One evening, as Jonas and his wife walked home after a local event where she was honored for resilience, she stopped and whispered, "I never thought all this would come from that one day." Jonas smiled, slipping his arm around her. "That's the thing about people who underestimate you. They always write the first chapter, but they forget you hold the pen for the ending." She leaned into him, tears glistening in her eyes. And somewhere deep down, she knew this wasn't just their victory, it was a victory for every underdog who had been silenced, dismissed, or shamed. Never let someone else's prejudice define your worth. What people try to use against you can become the very thing that elevates you. Dignity, courage, and truth always outlast arrogance and power. Have you ever been underestimated only to shock the very people who doubted you? Share your story in the comments. We want to hear it. If this story moved you, don't just leave. Join our community of voices that refuse to be silenced. Subscribe to Racism Exposed now, and never miss another story where the underdog rises.